Imagine this. Imagine you're the coach of an elementary school age soccer team. And your goal isn't to have the kids have fun. Your goal is to win every single match, to obliterate your competition, to go to national championships, etc. What would you do? Well, what you would probably do is you would first have the kids work out a lot. Push-ups, pull-ups, running, jumping jacks, whatever. Because the big difference between one 9-year-old soccer player and another is mostly whoever's the strongest, whoever's the fastest. And that strength and speed and endurance matter way more than anything else. The second thing you'd probably want to do is build up their skills, passing, dribbling, and all that. And probably the thing you would do the least is scrimmages. Now, scrimmages are more fun, everybody likes doing them, but they don't really have any major effect in terms, as major an effect as building up strength, speed, or building up skills. And this is something that, of course, you see in every professional sports team, where the vast majority of the time is spent on physical conditioning, a little bit less time is spent on skill building, and almost no time is spent on scrimmaging. And you see, of course, in Vorra Method that we do this with math, where we spend a lot of time building up your skills and not really that much time doing practice tests and practice sections, which is one reason that Vorra Method is so much more effective and why our students dominate every other company students and basically all other SAT test takers in the country on a pretty regular basis. So let's see, how would this apply to reading, though? With the idea of building the fundamentals and the strength and the speed and conditioning and all that's obvious in sports. It's kind of obvious in math, but it's harder to see that in reading. I want to show you this sentence. What I've done is I've taken a sentence and I have changed the word order. I've just scrambled the word order. I've written bank, the, robbed, criminal. And even from this, even though the words are in a strange order, you can easily tell what the sentence said. You know, there's a 95% chance that it's the criminal robbed the bank, and maybe a 5% chance that it's the bank that robbed the criminal. On the other hand, if I make the sentence a tiny bit more complex, goat, I, man, ate, saw, a, the, whom, I've taken a slightly more complex sentence, jumbled up the words, and it's much, much harder to figure out what this sentence is. Here's the original sentence: the man whom I saw ate a goat. Now, what happens here in this very, very simple sentence, this is how most people, this is how most people read. They basically take all the words in the sentence, just jumble it up however, and guess the most likely meaning, and most of the time it works. Obviously on something like the SAT or the GRE or the GMAT, it's not really going to work. So what skill are we talking about building here? Now you've probably heard, we'll get to that in a second, but you've probably heard that people who do well on the SAT reading, a lot of them take Latin. Latin has this high correlation with doing well in the SAT. And to some extent, maybe that's because people who take Latin tend to be big, huge nerds. Obviously, I took Latin. To some extent, it is that Latin helps you with some advanced vocabulary. But here's the thing that most people who don't take Latin don't realize. Latin has a very intense focus on grammar. In Latin, the words can be put in basically any order, and you look at the part of speech of each word by studying the ending, and you can figure out if it's a subject or direct object or whatever, and you essentially reassemble the sentence's meaning based on all that. And it's quite tricky. What that does is it really teaches you the skill of reading grammatically, reading through grammar, using the grammar to help you read. And when it comes to dominating at reading, that's the most important skill. In sports, it's things like this, and things like this. Definitely not things like this. This is not what's going to get anybody to be a great athlete, but things like this and this certainly do. And in reading, it's going to be basically two things. It's going to be grammar and logic. And grammar and logic are very closely related. If you build up your grammar skills, it's kind of like the same as doing a lot of push-ups or pull-ups or sit-ups. If you play soccer or football, there's no time where you're going to do something that is similar to a pull-up or do something similar to a push-up, but you realize that doing push-ups and pull-ups builds up your strength and endurance and all that kind of stuff, and that's going to help you become a great athlete. And you see that athletes of any sport will run and do push-ups and pull-ups and all that kind of stuff. The same is going to be true here. Even if grammar, you're like, well, grammar isn't exactly like reading. Well, in a lot of ways it is. It's teaching you how to group words together effectively. It's teaching you how to understand put those groups in different positions and whatnot within the sentence. It's teaching you to quickly extract the information from the sentence. It's not as fun. Obviously, I mean, grammar is not anybody's favorite thing. Grammar is the equivalent of running and working at it. It's the equivalent of all the unfun parts of sports that actually make you good at sports. Grammar and logic, that's what's going to make you good at reading. And so when you're doing grammar, don't just think about like, oh, here's a way to find errors and whatnot. No. Grammar is how you learn to read fast. Now, in my own experience, as I think most of you guys know, I got perfect scores in the GRE and on the GMAT. Now, some of that, and I also finished both the tests. I finished way early. I finished the GRE about an hour and 25 minutes early, the GMAT about an hour and 45. The other way around. The GMAT an hour and 25 minutes early, and the GRE about an hour and 45 minutes early. And some of that is just by being fast at math, but a lot of that is by being fast at reading. And that reading speed comes from grammar. Those of you guys who've seen our rapid analytical reading video, you know that grammar is the source. Grammar mastery is the source of reading speed and reading accuracy. And if you haven't taken, if you want to learn more about that, we have that for sale on Amazon, whatever. But you don't need to get into all of that to do this. You just need to start to get this idea that reading through grammar is faster, it's more accurate. So building up your grammar skills is the most important part of building up your reading skills.